Welcome back to A Little Faith. This is the podcast sponsored by the Williamsburg Christeltian Foundation. I'm Levi. I'll be the host today, and I'm excited to have Chris Sales with me. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Hey, Levi. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. We wanted to have this chat on the phone next week, or actually, later this week. The Faithtalk that you did for us at Great Lakes Bible School last summer will be going online, and we kind of wanted to talk more about that and explore a little more your talk. What do you remember? It was a lot of preparation. I think we were still figuring out how best to prepare for those. When you were pulling that together, how did it kind of affect your faith? I guess the actual preparation of the talk.
I think one of the things that really hit home when you have to prepare for a specific period of time on a specific topic, and then thinking about faith at that level, I think it just reinforced in my mind. I mean, I knew this, but it reinforced that faith is something that has to be practical. You sort of think faith and you think of this sort of abstract concept. And preparing the faith talk really crystallized in my mind that faith is a practical thing. It's something that has to apply in our life.
So not just like a thing that you know, but really an action. You mean like a?
Yeah.
What do you mean by practical?
Yeah, exactly. It's an action. It's something that we do. Faith is something you do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's based on belief. We can rhyme off Hebrews 11 verse 1 and have sort of a definition of faith, but it's a doing thing. It's an action thing. It's not just theory. I mean, it's based on ideas and beliefs and principles, but at the end of the day, it has to be something that impacts our everyday life. And I think in preparing it and thinking specifically about the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, that faith it's a progressive sort of thing. It's kind of based on learned experience. I mean, there's things that those young men knew as facts or as principles from their life, from their Jewish upbringing. But all of a sudden now, what's this going to look like when stuff starts happening in life, and how's that going to help you through the circumstances of life?
I really like that you chose Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to kind of dive into or use as the example for your talk, because we don't have any background to their character. They basically show up. We know they're with Daniel and they're in Babylon, and then are given such an extreme example, an extreme challenge, I'm saying, and become that example.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Unlike David, who we even have his childhood a little bit as he built up to a face-off with Goliath and goes on to other challenges.
Right, right.
They're
That's like absolutely true. But I think even I don't think I had quite the time. That was one problem, trying to constrict my time on the Faith Talk. But,
right.
We do know, for example, their Jewish upbringing, that they've been prophesied that they'd be taken into Babylon. So, here was this prophecy being fulfilled, and they're like, wow, this is, we're it. We knew this was coming, and here we are. And then they're told, but you're only going to be there 7 years, we're coming back. So they have these, but that's, again, sort of theoretical. Like we read the Bible today, and, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Here they are in the middle of it, and then they have that experience right away where the king's meat and wine is supposed to be fed to them, and Daniel and the three of them say, no, we can't eat that kind of food. It's either been offered to idols, or it's unclean, or whatever, we don't know specifically. And so they get tested for 10 days eating just vegetables, and they come out of that situation. Now, that wasn't technically life or death situation, but it was, it was an opportunity for them to sort of put God to the test, in a sense, in a positive way. And God says, look, I'm going to bless you. You obey my laws or my principles, and I will look after you. So they had these little things along the way that we're building. I mean, we're maybe reading between the lines a bit.
Yeah.
To me, that sort of transfer of sort of positive examples in our life can then help us face maybe those more challenging circumstances.
Right.
And that's what I really like to, I really tried to emphasize, sort of, I don't know if this is even a word or a thought, but like the transitivity of those experiences. So God expects us to look back on our life and say, hey, I was with you there. I will be with you in the future. Like, I got this, I'm with you throughout this experience. And we tend to like compartmentalize things and say, well, I've never faced this before, and maybe fail. Yeah, that's kind of, you look, I think if you take that idea and read through scriptures, I think we get some of that, where God gives us little helps along the way to prep us for that maybe more challenging experience that we don't know is coming, but he knows.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I like that. He's been with me. He's been with me before, and he'll be with me again. It reminds me of Samson. The ultimate lesson of Samson there at the end is, that line, "Oh Lord, remember me," is like heartbreaking because I've so been in that position, just where even in my relatively short life, because I think he's much older at that time, just it's like it's me that forgets. It's not really the Lord. It's me that forgets what he's done before.
Right.
And Samson says that, "Oh Lord, remember me," as if he'd been forgotten. It just takes us. It takes us calling back. But yeah, and their example is again so extreme. It's just so, and you detail it in the talk. Facing certain death in that fire.
Right.
But like we're saying, that and Samson is the practical outworking of faith. Being able to make those decisions.
And what I love about the story with Hannah and Mishael and Azariah is that when they're confronted right before Nebuchadnezzar, he says, "Look, I'll give you one more chance to do this. Are you going to bow down or not?" And they're like, "Well, we're not going to bow down." And he challenges them, "Well, God's not going to save you." And they're like, "That doesn't matter. Like, whether he saves us or not is not the point. We're not going to worship idols because we worship the one true God." And just that full-on commitment, like no matter what, one way or the other, we're going to serve God. And, we know it worked out for them in a very positive way, but they were willing to accept that, well, maybe this was the end of their life. Right. And you think about the men and women of faith in Hebrews chapter 11, some of them are commended for their faith that led to their death, and some of them are commended for their faith that got them out of, difficult and potentially life-threatening situations. So the end result didn't matter. They're going to be in God's kingdom. That's not the point. The point is the quality of their faith was such that they were going to face whatever circumstances, no matter what, and trust in God. And that's just amazing.
Yeah. Do you have any times in your life that you've seen? I like that word. I'm going to keep your word, transitivity. I guess that you've experienced that have built your faith, that have helped later, kind of thing, or had to call back on your previous experience.
When I think it was Helen was really prompting me in my preparations to really think of a time in my life, and the one that came to my mind that I think really helped me develop the Faithtalk was in July of 2002. We had an opportunity to move to Australia for 2 years and teach at the Heritage College there. And when I just think through that experience, like the opportunity arose late in 2001, early 2002, and we're like, wow, we got 4 young children, 12 years and under. How's this going to even look? What can we do? So there's lots of paperwork and lots of hurdles that need to be cleared before you can do something like that. And we thought, well, we'll give it a try, and if it works out, I guess that'll be an indication that this is an opportunity we're supposed to take up. So it's definitely a step of faith, and we applied for visas and all this kind of stuff, and thought how it might look like getting a leave from my work. That was the first thing, and that leave was granted, and things seemed to fall into place. So we thought, okay, let's do this. And so and my wife and I and 4 young children headed over to Australia for 2 years.
Wow, yeah, that's a big move, especially with young kids. I can't imagine. That kind of upheaval.
Yeah, it was an exciting opportunity to teach at a Christadelphian school. Our kids let's see, they would have been ranged in age from 4 to 12, something like that. So the three oldest ones would be in the school right away, and there was lots of positives, but we were there for about 3 months, and found out that Martha was pregnant. We got pregnant while we were there, unplanned, and I can remember walking to school in several days thinking, just a sec, God, how's this worked into this plan? Like, this is kind of not what I expected. What would this mean? The potential upheaval of that. It was too late to qualify for health insurance there, because there was a 6-month window where there was you can have what are they called, things that you kind of come with. And even though we got pregnant in Australia, we didn't. The 6-month window didn't allow for that. So this meant out of pocket expenses for visiting doctors and having it in the hospital, and this was just, I'm like, this how is this? And I was really bewildered. Deep in prayer, saying, okay, I don't get this. I had an idea of what was supposed to happen, and this wasn't part of it.
Right.
I must admit, at the time, I didn't think about the fact that God had obviously opened all these doors
to get you there.
So,
that's interesting. Yeah,
to get us there. So I was really, I guess I just kind of resigned. It wasn't a faithful act at that point. I was just like, okay, we'll see how this thing goes.
I feel like you almost at that point you're taking it both ways, because you said all the doors were opened for the move, right? Like you clearly recognize God being with you in the move, and I'm sure you said the same thing at the time. And then you get to the pregnancy, and you're like, well, what are you doing? Are you with us now? That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing. Yeah.
So reflecting back on it, I'm thinking, okay, I should have transferred that knowledge that God had been with us to this point to trust that He was still with us. But there were some tough moments. There was some real struggles, some heart-wrenching, you kind of, have a debate with God, but, you're like looking for more answers. And I think He was just saying, I got you. Like I got you here. I'll get you through this as well.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
We had used midwives here in Canada on, 3 of our 4 children that we had at that point. And so we thought, okay, well, maybe if we met a midwife, that will cut down some of the expenses if we can avoid the hospital and so on. So I did some searching on the internet for midwives in Australia, and got an email from one, some link somewhere, and emailed this lady, and explained our situation, that we were from Canada, and we didn't have health insurance and so on and so forth. So the email came back, said, "Oh, I'm a Canadian too," and she said, "I'm only here in Australia right now trying to help the Australian midwives get government recognition for funding and whatever, like we did back home in Canada." I was like, "Oh, wow." So I explained to her that we were from Ontario and we'd used midwives before. Turns out she actually knew the 2 midwives we'd had before. They were students of hers, but knew them by name. And this just really calmed us. It was another little indication, God's just kind of just reminding us that He's in control. So she couldn't practice midwifery in Australia, but she obviously had lots of contacts. So she put in contact with another fine woman who came around and had all the prenatal visits, and we set things up so that we could have it in the home. We had to have an ambulance, sort of not on standby, but on call. Yeah. And someone from the ecclesia there had given us a voucher, but we didn't have to pay for the ambulance. It's kind of we could call and it was prepaid if necessary.
Oh, okay.
People just rallied around. They knew our situation. We had to have oxygen on the site. I had to rent an oxygen thing with a mask and so on, have it in the room just in case. So anyway, I worked at Harrods College there, and my colleague leading up to the birth had taken up a collection at the school and handed me this card hoping for a blessing on the new arrival, and it was like stuffed full of money. It was just cash in this envelope, and I was just like, just overwhelmed with the support and the encouragement. All I did was I went home and I just kind of put it in my drawer beside the bed. Didn't count it. Didn't, just kind of had it there. I was like, wow, okay, this, God's holding our hand through this whole situation. The home birth went without complication. Didn't need to use the ambulance. Didn't need to use the oxygen. We had our son born there, right at home in the home we were renting, right near to the school. After a few days, I wanted to call him Abel because I love the name Abel. I love the Bible character Abel. It's my wife's maiden name, so took her a while to like warm up to it being a first name. But I finally convinced her that was okay. So then we kind of went all out, and his middle name is Uriah, so his initials are AUS, Abel Uriah Sales. So that was kind of cool because he's born in Australia, and
right.
Yeah, the short form for Australia.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. But that was fun going to school for that first. I think it was about a week long. He didn't have a name, and all the girls would rush me every morning. What's his name? And I'm like, well, we haven't chosen the name yet.
Oh, that's funny.
We had some fun with that. But when we announced it, everyone was obviously very excited.
Yeah.
So still no indication from this midwife, what the expense was going to be, and we weren't worried in that sense. But she came for the postnatal visits, and Martha was obviously doing really well, and.
This is the Canadian midwife or the Australian one?
No, this is the Australian one. Yep. Okay. The Canadian couldn't practice there. The first one she just put in touch and let it go. Yeah. So after maybe a couple of weeks after the birth, I said to her, we should probably settle up, the expense, your cost. So we had paid nothing up to this point, and. She said, oh, yeah, I've been meaning to do that. I'll get to that. And, of course, she knew our situation and had lots of great conversations. That's the beautiful thing about midwives. They just have a real bond, that she developed a really friend relationship with Martha. And anyway, a couple weeks later, she said, okay, I think next week would be the last week. And I said, okay, so you'll have a bill for us then. She said, oh, absolutely. And so she came, and everything was fine. The baby was doing really well. Martha was doing well. And so finally she presented me with this, like, invoice. And, I glanced down, and the expense was, I thought, very reasonable. She had it all detailed out, all the hours and expenses and so on. And there was a figure at the bottom, and I said, okay, fine. So it's on the bed. I put it down there. I went over to my table, got out this envelope. And Levi, this is no stretch of the imagination. I'm counting out this money for the first time ever. And I'm counting it out, looking at this invoice. And when I got to the end, I think I was $20 short.
Wow, that's amazing.
The money that had been collected pretty much matched exactly what the expense was.
Wow.
And I think the lady said, "Oh, that'll do," and kind of, hugs, and you're at that point in tears.
Right.
And just because I'd told her where this money had come from, and it was a great opportunity to witness to the, a community like we have that just rallies around and supports, and a God that just, takes care of us way more than we even can anticipate. And so it was a very moving experience and faith building. And that the birth took place almost like the 1 year anniversary of our stay, like right in the middle of our stay there. So it went fine. We never ever did have to go to the hospital with any of the kids.
Wow. And
came home with this little Australian souvenir who's now 16 years old.
Yeah, wow, what a crazy story. I mean, especially, I'm struck by the Canadian midwife too, which is how comforting that would be, and unnecessary. You could have found the right one in the first search, but that's an encouragement. And then obviously that having that number, that dollar number, be the same. That's amazing. Yeah, as always, when you see it working out, because then it does feel the same as I'm sure how easy it was, or how all the doors were open for the move, and then all the doors continue to be open for that birth, for Abel's birth. That's crazy.
And you reflect back on it, and all those who were thinking like, what's going on? Why have why is it happening? And you think back now after 16 years, and like you can't imagine life without him. the deep connections that we have with brothers and sisters in Australia. Some of them revolving around the fact that we have, a son that was born there. It just, God has that. He knows the end from the beginning. He has that, and we see the here and now. I think that's where the faith piece comes in, where you're like, okay, I'm only seeing like a few feet in front of me. God, there's no fog at all. He sees the whole thing. Right. But we can always reflect back and say, well, God's been with us. And maybe we overlooked some of these things. We just maybe took them for granted, like, oh, yeah, but things are just working out. But if we say, God's there, and he's got a plan, and problems are going to arise. We might consider them problems, but, he sees them as just opportunities for growth. And he's got a plan. He's going to work with us through those things. And that's where the faith piece comes in. We don't see the future, but we trust that God is going to help us through whatever circumstances arise. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and our job is to simplify it to just making the right decision. Like back to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like you're saying, they're saying death or no death. The right decision is to not bow to this false idol.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to trust in God that He actually does know best. I mean, think about that. Why are we here in Babylon? Why are we could be doing so much more if we were back in Jerusalem helping the remnant back there or whatever. And God said, no, I want you here in this place, in this foreign country, for this very purpose. And my purpose is going to be worked out through your life's experiences, and just to trust that God's got that all together, even when we don't.
I mean, I keep thinking of other stories, and I guess we jump into another. But Abraham climbing the mountain with Isaac behind him, knowing he has to sacrifice his son, and given the promise of many children, many nations. Yeah. This is already the child of a miracle, him being old, and him and his wife being beyond age-bearing years, and he is still willing to sacrifice his son, which is an amazing witness of faith. Same impossible, like you actually said it in your faith talk, and I appreciated the honesty. You're like, if I was Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, I would say no, or I would likely bow.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing the same thing. Having that same amount of strength, and then Abraham having that strength to willingly sacrifice your only child, which seems against God's plan. Like you're saying, that's what I think is amazing. That story is, why would I kill this child who was given to me as a miracle and has been promised? It's the same confusion, but we just can't see the solutions that God sees. We can't see the fullness of the plan.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you for your for this time and sharing that story and all the time you put in with the Faith Talk. We appreciate all your work, and I hope this conversation encouraged me. I hope that it continues to, these ideas encourage others as well.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you, Levi, for hosting this and helping me through it.
Yep, no problem. All right, we'll talk to you later, Chris.
Okay, Levi, take care.